Final hour overdrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Brian Hayes, Frankie Corrado, Dave Naylor later in the hour. Chris Johnston will join us here in a moment. The Leafs go 1-1 over the weekend. And I'd say lucky to play Buffalo, but they did turn the Jets on about halfway through that game. And in the third period, at one point, they were out shooting them like 9-0, 10-0.
Still got to turn the Jets on. Like, just because you're playing a bad team, like, doesn't mean it's automatically going to happen. They played Detroit. Detroit's not very good. They couldn't turn the Jets on Saturday.
That's right. Yeah, and listen, offense has been a really big conversation. Now you have Stolarz, who's injured, and Hildeby was okay last night. Wasn't great. Wasn't challenged again by the end of the game.
But you know what it was? You got a start where you didn't have to put you didn't have to put Wall in with Stolarz out, and you won the game.
Big.
Like, that's huge.
That's a good way of putting it.
Stolarz is hurt, and Wall can't play every single night because you always wonder, like, what's creeping around the corner with him. He's been hurt a lot. So you put the kid in, and, hey, it was fine, but you won the game, and you didn't have to play Wall. That's a huge win.
Well, and the next time you're going to see him, unless Stolarz is back, which he could be. They keep downplaying his injury, but they've been doing that with everyone, and it's never on time. Yeah. McCabe wasn't on time. Matthews wasn't on time. Domi, McMahon, it was always like, they're close, and then it was still a week or so. So I'll believe it when I see it that Stolarz will return on the weekend. But they're in Dallas on Wednesday, tough game. But then at Buffalo Friday, at home against the Islanders Saturday. If Hildeby goes, you're still going to be favored in whichever game he plays in. And I would assume they'd go Wall Wednesday, Friday. I would think, and then Hildeby goes Saturday at home against the Islanders. But that's probably the best way of putting it. Regardless of how it played out, you played Hildeby and you got to win.
Yeah.
And the bigger story for me last night was Buffalo because now they're 0-7-3 in their last 10. If they lose to Montreal tomorrow night, Montreal will pass them in the standings, I believe.
Which I'm not sure fans would want. I feel like they're
Montreal. Do you get the impression in Montreal you're there all the time? You're calling that game tomorrow night.
Yeah, I'll be there tomorrow.
Like, are they embracing just a full tank now?
There's a portion of the fan base that says, "Well, we're here anyway."
You've gone this deep, you might as well finish close to last.
Yeah, talk about being okay. But you know what's funny? Like, I was talking to Muddy about this before the last game that we called. Like, if you looked at the division or if you looked at the wild card last week, the Habs were 5 points out of a playoff spot, but they were last in the Atlantic. So if I just looked at you at this time of the year, regardless of where the positioning was, and I said to you, you're 5 points out of a playoff spot in mid-December, is that quote-unquote in the mix? What would your answer be?
I guess in general you'd say yes.
Right?
Like, yeah, I mean, it's not insurmountable, 5 points out.
So, I guess you look at it that way. Like, okay, you had bad loss against Pittsburgh, lost to Winnipeg, but at that point, you were still kind of in the mix. Now, I do think there's a portion of the fan base that just says, we're here anyways. Like, let's just grab who knows who it's going to be. Misa, Martone, Schaefer, we're here anyways. Mm-hmm. So, because we're probably not going to turn it over next year and be a playoff team. So let's grab one more guy on our way up.
Yeah, and you would think they would lean offense. Yeah, what would be interesting is if that Schaefer kid's on the board when they pick.
Oh,
what do you do? Because that kid has made Team Canada as a 17-year-old. Never happens generally for a defenseman. And yet you have Hudson. You've got Gooley. You've got Reinbacher coming. You got Mayu, who's played well with Laval.
Yeah.
Like, you've kind of done, you would think, a lot of the heavy lifting with the defense. Yet, if you believe in Schaefer and if he's standing there for you, I mean, that's going to be tough for them to pass up.
That's hard.
Yeah, because I don't know enough about the junior ranks. It's that Hagens kid that's presumed to go first, right?
Yeah,
the American kid.
It feels like now more than ever. I don't know.
But Schaefer's making a push, isn't he?
I don't know if it's a 4-horse race, but I think coming into the year, a lot of people would have said, it's hurt for Hagens this year. But now it's like it could be Hagens, could be Martone, could be Schaefer. Depends if a team really wants a defenseman. I think Misa would be on the outside looking in, but it's a 3-4 horse race now,
right,
for that first overall, which is pretty cool. We never get that.
No, and what that also would suggest is if you have the 4th pick, you're probably okay.
Yes.
If you lose out on the lottery, you still might get possibly the best player in the draft. But, and listen, Montreal's been in this position for years. They weren't expected to be competitive this year. I think it'd be a different approach if you were Nashville. where you thought you were good, you're 5 points out. Okay, we got to take advantage of this.
Yeah.
In Montreal, it's fool's gold. I think people understand this team's just simply not good enough. They're trying to find any positivity they can. That's why Laine's, been so great for them.
Great story.
It's been great for them.
Yeah.
And I think Montembeault making Canada is a positive. Cole Caulfield seems to be scoring every night.
Hudson's the guy.
Hudson's been outstanding for them.
It feels like every game they'll grab a clip of Lane Hudson, throw it up on
Even
Twitter.
though it may not result in a goal or anything. It's a one-man cycle, and they're like, okay, blast that out on the social.
It's so good.
Get that out on social.
It's good
Edge
stuff.
work by Lane Hudson. Yeah. Joining us now on the Maple Toyota hotline, here's our TSN hockey insider, Chris Johnston. What's happening, CJ?
From cold and flu protocol today, so I might be a bit low energy.
Uh-oh. Well, let's see if we can get you going. Where should we start here? Maybe in Buffalo. So it's been well reported today that Terry Pegula flew to Montreal to meet with the team. I think he met with Kevin Adams, the GM, Lindy Ruff, the coach, and the players. And it sounds like the messaging was, it's all good. We're not going to do anything crazy. Do you believe that is the truth if they get spanked by Montreal tomorrow night?
Well, I believe it's the truth in the short term just because of where we are in the calendar, right? I mean, the trade freeze, roster freeze kicks in on Thursday. We're just a week before Christmas. I don't think any team out there is looking to fire someone, at this stage of the season. But kind of my view on it is let's circle back in early January and see where things are. I mean, from all everything I've heard, it really was a calm the waters kind of meeting. Obviously pretty extraordinary thing for the owner of a team to do, fresh off his Bills win, and he's flying to Montreal to, try to calm things with the Sabres. But Pegula, when you look at him, he's been a very patient owner, maybe a little too patient at times for Sabres fans, but he's not Jim Dolan, right? He's the antithesis of that in terms of an owner. So I think he is legitimately just trying to calm things down and see where they get to. But, I don't think we can say with certainty when a team's dropped 10 straight games that means anyone's safe. I mean, they're safe this week, but, let's get through the holiday break and when that roster window lifts and see if they continue to lose. I mean, at some point a decision might still be coming on a couple different fronts.
Do you think Buffalo would be reluctant to trade some of their young players because of the success other guys have had going elsewhere, whether it's been O'Reilly or Reinhart or Allmark? Do you think Buffalo looks at a guy like Cousins or Quinn and says, like, we're not going to let it happen again on our watch?
100%. I mean, how can you miss that? Every year it seems like a quote-unquote failed Buffalo Sabre is leading his team to a Stanley Cup these years. I mean, we didn't even mention Jack Eichel among those ones, obviously Reinhart last year.
Yeah.
We're not even talking players that won a Stanley Cup, but guys that were a key part of teams that got the job done. And so I do think there's some trepidation there. But I think that's probably the biggest thing that's held up a trade to this point, because the Sabres have been a team that have been pretty active in trade discussions, but I think that they're very worried about making the kind of move because some of these guys are struggling that it won't look too long, whether it's a couple months or maybe a year down the road, and you think, wow, why did we give up on him at that stage of his career? And so, I think for all kinds of reasons, it's got to be a bit of a gun-shy organization. Obviously, they've turned through head coaches, they've turned through players, they've turned through GMs, and here they are with the longest playoff drought in NHL history, and looks like it's going to be 1 year longer with where they're at today. And so I think they're trying to be patient, but the reality of their situation, I think, is going to make it harder and harder if they keep losing games, into the Christmas break and beyond it.
Well, the Rangers have not been patient necessarily. I mean, they moved off Trouba. It's been incredibly loud, yet they lost, multiple times again over the weekend. Peter Laviolette looks as if he doesn't have answers. Lindy Ruff basically said that on the record. Laviolette, they made Kakko a healthy scratch. I'm not sure the explanation really made a ton of sense.
I'm sorry, but not to cut you off, that is outrageous that Kakko was the healthy scratch there. They're not getting anything 5-on-5 from their top guys, and Kakko's been really good in that third line role. His line has been their best line. They don't get scored on, and that's the guy you make a healthy scratch?
Yeah.
Give me a break.
His explanation was fresh legs, as if Kakko's 38 years old. He's a kid. I mean, how much longer can it go for the Rangers before another shoe will drop there?
Well, I don't think it will be that long, honestly. I mean, because you look at the totality here, too. So those look like games that get a coach fired normally, right? I mean, you get spanked at home by L.A. and you're booed off the ice. The next night, the coach makes all kinds of unusual lineup decisions, Kreider down to the fourth line. Kako scratch, as you mentioned, moved everything around, didn't get any result out of it. But, the feeling is the Rangers really don't want to make a coaching change. So, what comes next? I mean, it was already Kreider and Trouba in the rumor mill 3 weeks ago. You trade Trouba. Are you talking about trading Kreider? At some point, is Jim Dolan looking at the front office and asking hard questions about Chris Drury? I mean, I think you look at that situation. There's nothing I would rule out as a possible next point. I mean, probably the only thing you can rule out is there's 4 or 5 players with no movement clauses. No guarantee they would move it if they were if management looked to trade them. But I feel like everything has to be on the table with the season the Rangers have had. So much of it feels self-inflicted. I mean, this team won the President's Trophy last year. They were in the third round of the playoffs, and
I don't know if that's cold and flu or if that's bad cell phone. It could have been a cold and flu.
I don't know if you just
could have been CJ.
I don't know if you go that abrupt to the flu.
That was a quick shoot deployment.
Yeah, that was mid-word.
And he was feeling it, man.
Yeah,
I don't think you would have known that this was his flu game.
No, he found it. He found a little something. He dug deep for us.
That's Jordan, Game 6.
Now, the thing about the Rangers that kind of, I guess, irks me in a way is like, it's been so loud around this group, right? Oh, this guy's going to get traded. That guy's going to get traded. There's obviously guys that go to the rink now, and they, like, I don't know if it's like they're grumpy or ornery about it, but it's not a good feeling going to the rink when you're just worried and always looking over your shoulder, or, hey, what's going to happen? It kind of turns into a bit of a soap opera. So, CJ, now that you're back with us, like, how much concern would there be from the Rangers' point of view about things just kind of turning into a soap opera and the team just never really finding it because guys are so, I don't know, unhappy or uncomfortable going to the rink every day?
Well, I mean, it feels like we're there, does it? I mean, I can't remember the record. 3-7 in their last 10, basically, since the trade rumor started. They did make the one deal. I mean, it's not as though they've gotten any reaction, and they were sliding at that point when all that first got out there. I mean, I don't know what rights the ship is. I'm not sure where I was cut off earlier, but I was kind of making the point. To me, this team isn't that much different than the one that had quite a bit of success last year. A couple players swapped in and out, but nothing that you would think would result in total different results on the ice. But that's what they're getting, and so it's highly flammable, I would say, the situation. And I think for players that have been there a long time, there's an element of looking at management, asking there. I mean, there's a lot of finger pointing, whether it's being done, explicitly or behind closed doors, and in the conversations. And so, I don't know if the break will help, if there's a rager on the road, if there's a way to clear the air, but it does feel like they need something to change the atmosphere in addition to just, the product on the ice, because I don't see any reason why this team should be this bad or as bad as they've been the last, 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
So the Leafs get a win last night. They lose on Saturday against Detroit. They have been inconsistent, yet they're finding ways to win. So off their schedule, it's going to get tougher. Dallas tomorrow or on Wednesday. Then they got Winnipeg rolling through town next Monday. But that third line came alive. And Max Domi, I said earlier, CJ, nobody, I think in the league needed a game like that last night more than Max, because it was starting to get to a point where it was embarrassing. Like he's not contributing anything offensively. He went 16 or 17 games without a point. And he showed up last night. He had a lot of life in his game. He's still an important piece. Like, what does he mean to the Leafs, and how integral does Max Domi have to be in order for them to feel like, okay, they're kind of hitting on all cylinders?
Well, he feels like a swing player to me in that, we've seen stretches even last season, early in the year, he had a difficult start, and then the second half was hot. I thought he played well in the playoffs. Obviously, he was filling in the top 6 and for a lot of that series against Boston and making an impact. And so it can go either way with him. And, given how the goals have been a little tougher to come by this year than what we're accustomed to for this team, it feels like, look, he doesn't have to be the leading scorer, but, him generating some offense, giving them a threat as a third line, if that's where he's going to be, I mean, all of that is huge. If he's not able to do it, or if he's playing in the top 6, I mean, I still think we're going to be talking about a trade for a player that can help the third line and give the Leafs a little bit more depth in that area. And so, it's not saying that he'll stand in place of a trade chip, but, I do think the Leafs need more of these guys to stand up. And so, I don't know what Nick Robertson's future is with the team, but him having a big night, Domi having a big night, I mean, you see what kind of game you get out of the rest of the guys. And look, lo and behold, they score 5 goals. So, We haven't seen a lot of that this year against any team. And so I think Domi is a massive part of things here. And even as bad as these first couple months have been, I think there's at least some hope there that maybe you get more out of him, because you did see it last year. I mean, he was had a really strong second half into the playoffs, and while you prefer that he didn't struggle at all, I think you're hoping he can replicate that.
Well, another player who had a big night was John Tavares, and I don't know, we've talked about the contract next year so much. I don't know if your opinion has changed about what he can do this year that would make you want to re-sign him more or at more money. But it's at least worth the conversation, given how well he's played. Tavares and his future with the Leafs. How would they view what he's doing and the success he's having this year?
Well, it certainly helps, right? Because at John's age, in any given year, any player, you're worried that there's going to be a dramatic fall off. And so far, I would say whether you're looking at the underlying numbers that he's produced, the fact he filled in for quite a while there when Matthews was out injured on the top line, and then obviously his goals and assists have been about where he's been the last couple of years. I mean, there's nothing there that suggests to me that fall off has occurred, and that's going to be part of the decision. I think ultimately, sitting here today, I think that they stay together. That I think that John is very sincere and wanting to remain a Leaf. It might not be a contract that gets done until after the playoffs are all done, and the dust settles on the season, and they sit down and get things done. But I just think with how committed he is to the organization, with his family, his kids were all born since he came to the city, and I think that it's pretty clear on the right number on his next deal, he can still bring a lot of value to the Leafs. So there's going to be a way to find to get him extended. But, I don't know that they have to do it in season, because, I think there's probably a lot of confidence in the Leafs front office that he's not someone looking to go. And so you're comfortable leaving that discussion until whenever the last game's been played.
Are you a believer in Anthony Stolarz actually being day-to-day, or is this the Maple Leafs version of day-to-day?
Well, it's hard to be a believer just based on this season. I don't have any reason to believe it's serious, his injury, but, the fact we're so close to the Christmas break, let's see how the results go this week. Maybe they decide not to put him back in, if the guys are rolling okay without him. So, day to day is kind of been week to week around here this year, and so until I see otherwise, it's hard to say that he's going to play on Friday when he's eligible to come off IR.
How eager do you think Jim Rutherford and company in Vancouver are to make a deal to shake things up? I don't even know if it's shake things up, but it just feels like they're not the type to sit too long and watch them not play well at home. It just feels like there's more there. How active would the Canucks be?
Extremely active, and that's Jim Rutherford's MO. Remember last year he made the Lindholm deal during the All-Star break, kind of a month before most other teams were doing their deadline work. You can be sure he would want to be, trying to bolster the team as soon as possible here. May not be able to get it done before the holiday roster freeze kicks in, but the Canucks are really looking for help on the blue line in particular. I think that they'll also be in the market for a forward as time goes along, but they're down Hronek right now to injury, and it's been tough slogging back there. And so I would think if we're taking sort of bets or picks on where the next significant trade comes from, it would not surprise me in the least if the Canucks were one of the two teams involved in making that deal.
All right. Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, that's with Demko returning, JT Miller back. That's what's kind of interesting here is they have reinforcements now, and yet it feels like it's an even stickier position that they're in. That makes sense, CJ, based on the way I guess they're playing. I mean, they got embarrassed on Saturday night. Brad Marchand rolls in there and, scores. He's trying to fight Quinn Hughes. That had to be embarrassing for that administration, even though they weren't affiliated with what happened in 2010.
Yeah, I'm sure a little bit. And look, they've been embarrassed with their results on home ice, too. I don't have the record in front of me, but I know it hasn't been good there. It's so much went right for the Canucks last year. I think this season has brought more challenges for everything they've been through with the injuries and all that. I actually think they're in a decent spot in the standings, but they don't right now look like a team that we're going to be tabbing as a Stanley Cup potential team. And so, because of that fact, I think they're very likely to take a big swing between now and March 7th. And based on the history, I'd suggest likely to come much sooner than later because Jim Rutherford doesn't like to wait.
The flu game for CJ. You just had your flu game. What a hit. What a hit.
It was good.
Fighting the flu. I love it. You're Jordan. You're the new Jordan.
You're the Jordan of insiders.
Jordan
How
of
do you feel
insiders.
about that?
If only some of that energy can go to my fantasy teams tonight in the first week of the playoffs, that would be great. But might be asking too much.
Might be asking too much. Good luck with that, CJ, and we'll do it again soon.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Chris Johnston joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com.
The Vancouver thing on the blue line is interesting because all we talked about, I think, for the last, call it year and a half, 2 years, was that you need massive bodies on the blue line, right? Like in order to win in the playoffs. But so they went out and they got Forbert, they got Desharnais. Who else did they bring in? They brought in, they went with big guys, but they don't have enough guys that can move the puck. And all of that falls on Hughes and Hronek. And when Hronek, they play together, right? So 2/3 of the game, you're having a hard time getting out of your own zone. And now Hronek's not playing. And so like that's been the biggest issue there. So much so that Eric Brandstrom has been like a revelation that they just needed someone lower in that decor that can move the puck a little bit. And so like he came over and it's like, we have to have this guy in the lineup where, you know, he's good.
Good for
fine,
him, but
right?
that is
You know what I mean?
troubling
Like-
when it gets to that point.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of exposing where you're at.
Yeah.
If that's kind of the feeling you have.
But then it's like the conversation, okay, what do we need? Do we need big guys or do we need puck movers? Because it's hard to find the guys that do it both really well. Like they're not very available.
Yeah. It's tough to do. Like I mean, ideally you have a combination, but even within that, you need a bit of all of the ingredients in all of it, including your smaller puck moving guys. They got to have some bite.
Yeah.
They got to be willing to fight through checks and push back and block shots.
Like a guy like Jared Spurgeon, he's a small defenseman. He's good.
Gritty and
he's
battle.
Not, yeah, he's not like overly elusive in any way, but like he'll battle you. He'll cross check you. Like he's got bite to his game, right?
Yeah.
He's been playing forever and he's always been a top pair guy.
Yep.
Like there's a smaller guy. That's a nice mold to have. For a
Absolutely. Absolutely. A nice mold to have right now is Josh Allen and the way he's playing.
Dude.
Now you see the way people are reacting to it. I've seen, again, multiple people down in the States talking about how he's the greatest quarterback of all time. And
No, they're not saying that.
I've seen it. Again, this guy is playing as well as anybody right now. And I think he's a lock for the MVP. I think he deserves it. I think if you're a Buffalo Bill fan, this is just a dream come true because between Jim Kelly leaving and him arriving, it was a disaster at the quarterback position.
Dude, I thought Tyrod Taylor was going to be the guy.
Tyrod was going to be the
ago.
guy. EJ Manuel was going to be the guy. I mean, we had the Doug Flutie fiasco, and then Drew Bledsoe was there. Like you could go down the list of how many different guys they tried. And now Allen is just a legend, and he's playing at such an incredible level. And what he did yesterday probably puts a cap on it in terms of the MVP pursuit. Dave Naylor's been there for almost every game he's played, if not every game. And the nail gun was in Detroit yesterday. We'll catch up with Dave, get his take on that. How good are the Bills? How vulnerable are the Bills in certain areas? Who would scare the Bills in the AFC? How important is it for them to get that first seed if it becomes available? There's a lot to get into with the nail gun. So we'll get to that and our best bet still to come. 2 games in the NFL tonight, 2 Monday nighters. Hazenbrough are laying the points with the Vikings. Owen Wilson laying the points with the Falcons. Big swing night tonight. Big swing night tonight. So we'll get to those 2 games as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. Dave Naylor will join us here in a moment. You know, I've noticed in society a real development post-COVID. And the NBA, I blame the NBA for this. I don't blame them, but the NBA, I think, is a representation of this. Coaches in the NBA used to wear suits, always suits. Then they got down to that bubble. They got mighty comfortable, started wearing the track suits, and they just said, we're never going back to suits. And collectively, the coaching society just all committed to that. Not one guy wears a suit anymore. It's kind of amazing to me that not like one guy doesn't say,
There's
you know what?
not one basketball coach wearing a suit anymore?
Everyone rocks the like suit pants with usually a quarter zip.
Okay.
Like that's kind of the move. Maybe you'll see a golf shirt. Generally, it's a quarter zip. But that was like, we got comfortable in COVID. We're not going back. What I have noticed in society is track pant guy, he is like never going back to non-track pants.
100%, man. 100%.
The amount of track pant guy that cruises the halls down here, because there used to be same pair of jeans every day for 30 years guy.
Yeah.
That guy existed. And there was a time in my life where it was like, I'm throwing on those jeans, whatever, but it was understood like, okay, I got to figure out the shirt and shoe combo, but I got a belt going on here. You know, I got to actually wrestle with these. And there's like, okay, those are pants.
Yeah.
Track pant guy said, screw it post-COVID. And I'm talking track pants. Like, I'm not slim fit Lululemons.
Okay.
No, yeah. I mean track pant guy.
Like you could,
and I respect it.
Like parachute, kind of like parachute.
Oh, yeah.
Garbage bag material, track pants.
Yes.
Can I just
life?
Let me admit
I love
something.
it and I respect it. I want that on the record.
I'm going to admit something, then we'll see if the nail gun has this same thing going on. I have currently one pair of jeans.
Really?
Yeah, one pair. That should let you know how little I actually wear jeans.
Is that because you're track pant guy? Is that what you're telling me right now?
I'm the Lulu kind of sweatpant guy.
And let me clarify. I will rock those too around here. I don't want someone to stop me and say, hey, you're a hypocrite.
I won't wear them to work. I won't wear them to work.
I've worn them to work. Like I'll look like this up top with a jacket and a collar with like Lululemon pants on. I've done that countless times.
I refuse, but I have one pair of jeans. That's how little I wear jeans anymore.
Yeah, jeans. I don't know, man. I got a few pairs of jeans.
Yeah.
I'll rock a jean. I'll bet you the nail gun crushes a pair of jeans.
Dude, Levi's, 100%.
Yeah. Different tones.
Yes.
Of jeans. I'll bet you the nail gun's got one for every week. Yeah. Every day of the week if he wants it. Here he is, Dave Naylor, our TSN football insider. Is that accurate? How many pairs of jeans do you own?
I think active, I may have some retired ones that I haven't, done away with. I think active, I have about 3. But I actually could start this segment with a bit of a jeans story, believe it or not.
Yeah?
You ready?
What do you have?
Okay, so I come back off a vacation Saturday night. And I get home at about 10:30. And by the time I get to sleep, it's 1 or something. And I'm on a 10 o'clock in the morning to Detroit for Lions-Bills, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, 10 o'clock, land at 11. So I'm probably going just to the hotel and then right to the stadium. So I pack a bag, obviously, carry on, and I wear my suit. I put on my suit in Toronto and fly to Detroit. And I'm like, okay, this is cool, wear the suit, have it on all day, no big deal, because I'm riding back. I flew in, but I drove back with our cameraman, Peter Bradley, today. And that's no problem. I'll, wear the suit for one day and get out of it and ride back. And then I get to my room and I realize I didn't bring any jeans.
Oh, no. No jeans.
No jeans, just the suit. I brought a hoodie and a T-shirt. So it was 2 full days sitting in the suit, including riding back 5 hours from Detroit today. So the first thing I did when I got in was went straight to the dry cleaner and dropped that baby off.
Yeah, man. I love it. The suit pant with a hoodie. That's a guy who's been through it, man. Yeah. That's the guy that's traveling and he's in a dark place. I know it well. That's you, man. Well, listen, you got to see a great ball game yesterday. Oof. Yeah, it was something. And, Josh Allen, it feels like it's effectively locked up now because he was going to likely win the MVP anyway. Last night he plays the way he plays. They win in Detroit. Now you have all the national media in the States saying it's over, and anyone that doesn't vote for him is going to get bullied now. So I wouldn't be shocked if he won it unanimously. But what's it like seeing him up close and personal, watch him in the zone? Because he is playing at a level that is absolutely absurd right now.
I don't know if I've ever seen anything like it. I mean, and in particular, look, he's doing everything well right now. I mean, there isn't an element of his game. Even when he was running, when they would be 3rd and 4, 2nd and 6, and it was almost like he could pick a spot by the 4th quarter because they were so shell-shocked with what he could do throwing the football that, he could just run around the end and step out of bounds whenever he wanted. But the stuff that really blows you away is the stuff outside of structure, which is the stuff that he's been criticized for in the past, right? And being a little too loose with the ball security and taking chances. And, McDermott got asked last night, when you stand on the sidelines and Josh breaks structure, is playing outside of structure, are you in amazement as much as everybody else? And his answer back was, yeah, and blacking out. And you really think, because he's watching this stuff, but he has to really trust his quarterback. But I think Josh Allen's a really humble guy, from what I can tell. And again, I'm always aware that, hey, I'm wearing a media badge. I don't know Josh Allen. I see him once or twice a week through work, and sitting and watching him talk to the media and see sometimes the way he interacts with teammates. But when you talk to teammates about him, and I've been covering this team, a weekly basis now. This is for the third year, so you do get a pretty good sense, I think, of what a guy is like. And a guy to be that talented and kind of have that much humility, which is really reflected in his teammates' attitude about him. And here's the other small part about that. If you're a guy from California and you're going to be the face of the Buffalo Bills, you kind of got to be that guy. You got to lean in and be a Western New Yorker a bit. And Josh Allen does that. But, I mean, the things he's doing, it's almost like every game there's a Buffalo Bills PR tweet about Josh Allen became the first NFL quarterback in history to this, and this. I mean, it's almost comical. One after another. The first guy ever to have 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns. The first guy to have a running touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and a passing touchdown, one of each in a game. Back-to-back weeks with at least 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns. I mean, he is not just doing things that we're not seeing elsewhere in the NFL right now. Not things that we haven't seen in the last few years. He's doing things that nobody in the NFL has ever done. And when you combine it with the ball security, and I mean, that throw he made to Keon Coleman, the 64-yarder on a rope, after buying time and dancing around. I think it's one of those things that probably on television it's harder to appreciate. But when you're sitting up in that press box and you can see the whole field and you can see the way that defense just freezes when Josh starts to move around and the way he's time and space in his head, and then he unleashes that rocket. It is something else, guys.
Oh, yeah.
How much credit does the O-line deserve? Because we talk about Josh Allen all the time, but I feel like that might be one of those things where it almost gets underappreciated because of Allen's brilliance.
I think you're right. I mean, no sacks. I think, 3 hits yesterday, something like that. And here's the other thing about the O-line part of it. One, they're talented. And Aaron Cromer, their offensive line coach, is very, very good. But, and I'll stand to be corrected on this, but I think I'm right about what I'm about to say. It's an incredible stat. I don't believe the Buffalo Bills have lost a single man game on their offensive line to injury the past 2 seasons. Think of that. Think how many times you hear an NFL game go, well, so-and-so's playing so-and-so.
Yep.
The O-line is really banged up, right? Or, they're playing their backup tackle, or, this tackle was signed off the practice roster 2 weeks ago. The Bills have marched their starting 5 out there for 17 games last year, 31 consecutive games.
Wow.
And again, I don't think I'm wrong about this. And if I am, I'm barely wrong, but I believe it's 31 consecutive games. And, they made a couple of switches on the offensive line from last year to this, but they're starting 5. So I think that's the other part of it, just in terms of when you're blocking for a guy like Josh Allen, it's a unique beast. So the fact that they can roll out those same 5 guys every single week and have that consistency, I think that's part of what you're seeing as well, Frankie.
With Dave Naylor. So the Bills still have an opportunity to get that first seed. Kansas City, they've got some tough games coming up. They got Houston, they've got Pittsburgh, and then they've got Denver, and now you're dealing with a high ankle sprain for Mahomes. So who knows if he's even going to play in all those games, any of those games, a few of those games. How important do you think that number 1 seed is to the Bills, or should be to the Bills? And then beyond that, who in the AFC do you think still scares the Buffalo Bills?
Well, you know what the Bills have left, right?
Easy.
Patriots, Jets, Patriots.
Right.
I mean, so I think I don't want to get too far ahead of it, the end of the schedule here, but there's a pretty good chance they're going to finish the season 14-3. And again, with Mahomes' high ankle sprain, they play Saturday, they come back on Christmas, on Wednesday. They've got a really condensed schedule as well. And I mean, Kansas City's going to the playoffs, so how much risk do you want to take exposing Patrick Mahomes to at the end of the schedule when he's the guy who butters your bread in the playoffs? That's going to be interesting to watch. In terms of what it means, I mean, it's the one thing I don't believe they've ever had it. I don't think they've ever had the number 1 seed in the AFC in the McDermott era. So, I mean, it gives you get a week off, right, and you're home field through the playoffs. There's a bit of an irony about the Bills earning home field of the playoffs, though, and obviously you can't predict or you can't pick where you play. But among the factors that have played into at least the last 2 weeks when the Bills have put up over 40 points, both games were played in perfect conditions, one at SoFi, one at Ford Field. And, of course, if the Bills go through the playoffs, you're not going to get perfect conditions at Orchard Park. But, I mean, hey, Josh Allen's been pretty good all season, good weather, bad weather. I just think you see when the conditions are ideal, you see almost another level of what he can do. Teams that would scare you in the AFC, well, Kansas City for sure. And I think that, if you look at the way they lost last year to Kansas City, I mean, they only gave up 27 points, which was, I think, only one team all year held Kansas City, or the Bills put up 24 points on Kansas City, which was one of the highest totals of the year. They gave up 27, which wasn't a disaster against that team. But the problem was that the defensive line couldn't disturb Mahomes. They couldn't get off the field. He was just doing his thing, and they couldn't disrupt him. And I think even though winning in the regular season this year like they did in spectacular fashion on November 17th, that doesn't really ease, I think, people in Buffalo with the Bills organization about, wow, we played, because they beat them in the regular season 3 times in recent years, and they still can't beat them in the playoffs. So I don't know that you can say, well, check mark on Kansas City November 17th. No, Chiefs are a legit threat. And the other one is Baltimore. And maybe it's not as big a problem as we remember because they got blown out. I think it was week 4. And it was one of those games where you had a team that plays a lot of heavy offensive sets, that is really committed to run the ball, and they just blew the Bills away on it. And I think going into yesterday, there was a lot of fear that could be a repeat of Baltimore. With you got Gibbs, you got that offensive line, you've got Montgomery, and it's like, okay, the last time they played a team that was built like this, here's what happened. And I think, 2 things were different yesterday that happened than in the Baltimore game. One, they didn't give up any explosive runs early on like they did. You may remember Derrick Henry going off for, 79 on the 3rd play of the game or something in that game. And the other thing was their offense was so much better that they flipped the game script on Detroit and got them out of what they like to do, which is just line up and power run the ball and wait for explosive runs. And in Baltimore, they didn't score. They got behind. They got pressing. So maybe what they learned in executing against Detroit yesterday makes Baltimore less of a threat, but I still think that's not a great matchup for the Bills.
Yeah, that's where my head would go as well. I mean, Kansas City is always going to terrify you because of who they are, what they've done, right? If Mahomes is under center and that defense is playing the way it's playing, it's a very difficult out, especially if you have to go to Arrowhead. It seems like that's just going to be a very, very difficult thing to do. Yet, the Bills are very capable of doing it, and especially the way they're playing right now and the way Josh Allen's playing. But it does feel like Allen probably has to find another level in the playoffs. I don't even know if that's possible. I mean, based on what you've just described, Dave, up close and personal, seeing him do things that you don't think anyone's ever done before, is it reasonable to ask Allen to do more in the playoffs? Or does another element of this team have to step up a little bit?
I don't think Allen has to do more, and I don't think he has to do better. And as the other element of the team, this is the cool thing about this year's Bills. It kind of reminds you maybe a little bit of the Patriots and a bit of their golden era, where every week it's something different. It's not like, okay, you can stop Buffalo's offense if you do this. No, because they might not even be trying to do that. They may be trying to do this, and you're not lined up to stop that. I'll just give you a couple examples. You see what Ty Johnson's receiving total was in that game yesterday? Like 100 and something? He's the number 3 running back. He had over 100 yards receiving in the game. You think Detroit prepared for that? Right?
No, of course.
Okay, here's another one. You know how many targets Amari Cooper had yesterday? The second highest paid offensive player on the Bills yesterday. How many targets did he have yesterday? 0.
I was going to say 2 or 3, but yeah.
0. Not one. Did not have a catch. And by the way, that's the difference when Amari Cooper is your star receiver on your team as opposed to Stephon Diggs. Because if the Bills had won 48-42 in Detroit yesterday and Stephon Diggs had not had a target, guess what we'd be talking about today?
Oh, he'd be going nuts on the sideline, even in a win.
Body language, everything. Like I really think, moving on from Stephon Diggs has freed the Bills' offense to be able to do whatever they should be doing in any given game or any given series or even any given play, as opposed to this burden where Josh has got to funnel 14, 15 throws to Stephon Diggs every game. So I think that versatility, it started off back in the summer. Everyone talked about, the line they used, everyone eats, right? Hey, we don't have a star receiver, everyone eats. But they really are that kind of team, especially when you look at the way they mix in the 3 running backs into the pass game. So I don't think Josh has to be better. And I think the Bills can keep kind of flipping the script on teams week after week, as they're incredibly difficult to prepare for. Because, again, I don't know what the Lions expected going in, but I'm sure they saw some things they didn't expect and weren't prepared for. And that's kind of the magic of this offense and maybe what sets it apart from previous Bills teams.
Great catching up with you, Dave. Getting those jeans, man.
Yeah.
Make sure you pack those jeans next time you're on the road. Do not forget.
I will not, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, there's Dave Naylor, TSN Football Insider. Yeah, suit pants with like casual gear around the suit pant. That's a sign.
Yeah. I got jammed up once going for like a little weekend trip with my wife. I had like 3 or 4 T-shirts stacked, and I don't know what I did, but I didn't transport them into my luggage. So when we got there, I'm looking for stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have any T-shirts. I had to get like the T-shirt from the
shop?
souvenir shop.
No way.
Yeah.
Those are never good.
Yeah. Just
never good.
New York.
Okay. That's not bad. I mean, at least it was like a New York thing.
Yeah.
I guess you could take that. But yeah, that's concerning, man. You gotta pack. You pack all the time.
That was a
mistake for you.
That was a mistake.
That's surprising.
I didn't have a good system back then.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the nail gun. Like that is surprising.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get to our best bets brought to you by FanDuel. We got 2 games in the NFL tonight. And we'll let you know who Hazenbrough are on, who Owen Wilson are on, and who we're going to pick in our best bets for the 2 games tonight. We also got a rematch of the Cup final out in Edmonton. We haven't mentioned that yet.
Yeah.
Oilers-Panthers tonight. We'll touch on that to wrap up a busy afternoon. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, best bets brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. And, of course, you can make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Hazenbrough on the Vikings, laying the points tonight at home against the Bears. The Bears, terrible on the road. It feels as if they've effectively quit on the season. Minnie's been really good, and now the door's open for them to possibly finish ahead of the Lions. Not only winning the division, but maybe the conference, although I feel like the Eagles are in a good position to do that too. But very inspiring night I expect to see out of Sam Darnold. Has been sneaky good. It's not even sneaky anymore.
No, it's very good.
It's just very good.
They just don't get talked about very much, the Vikings.
Yeah, well, exactly, because I think the division they play in, Detroit is so loud, and they've been good, and they've been an interesting team. And Green Bay's the team that's just owned that division forever. They're the perennial favorites and all that kind of stuff. But the Vikings have been really good. I think they win. I think they cover the number. And I'm on the Raiders plus 5.5. Owen Wilson's.
You have to be.
They're laying it. They're taking the Falcons. I can't do it. Atlanta has been awful. Kirk Cousins has been terrible. 5.5 is just too big of a number for Atlanta. It doesn't even matter who they're playing, especially on the road. Kirk Cousins in prime time on the road. Recipe for disaster. Taking the points tonight. Best bets powered by FanDuel. FanDuel is the home for popular parlays this NFL season. Please play responsibly. 19 plus, physically located in Ontario. Oilers, Panthers tonight. Oilers a minus 132 favorite on FanDuel. That's appropriate. They've been crushing teams, man.
I'm not surprised. Skinner's playing well. It's very quiet around the Oilers, and that's great. Like
they're playing really well.
They're just doing their thing. I said this on after SportsCenter on Saturday night. Like, we know they got the 2 best players, or 2 of the best players in the world, right? But the next tier of guys, so that's Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, throw Skinner in there.
Bouchard.
Yeah, I was thinking more forwards. But
okay.
their next tier of forwards, when they play at their game, there's not many better like tier 2 forwards on a roster. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
That makes a big difference for them.
Huge. Hyman was a big issue for them. Nugent Hopkins was terrible earlier in the year. And
Skinner wasn't great either.
Skinner couldn't find a role. They were moving up and down the lineup. Henrique's a guy that can play. Arvidsson's a guy that actually had played pretty consistently.
Yeah, Connor Brown's being more productive now too.
They're an older team. It took them a while. Listen, they were dealing with a cup hangover without the cup. It was harsh. You could tell they didn't want to be back playing regular season games again. But they kept their head above water, and now they look great. And I think by the end of the year, they'll be one of the 3 or 4 teams people will be picking to win.
Yeah.
Like that kind of feels like where it's going. And I think Florida probably the same thing. Florida's just kind of going through the motions, good enough to pick up games, and they've had hiccups along the way, but they're going to get in. And if they're healthy and they reset, they'll be a favorite too.
Florida's a team that once the playoffs start, like the emotional investment, say that term, that's when like they can easily find it. I feel like for them, okay, a game in November, a game in December here and there, like it's hard to play that style over 82, but once the playoffs hit, like they just kind of know that they got it.
Yeah. They show their true colors. They're comfortable when it gets to that point. So yeah, this could be another Cup preview. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, I don't know how often that's ever happened where you get 2 teams back to back, especially in a 32-team league.
Yeah.
But
Skinner's playing better than Bobrovsky right now.
Yeah, Skinner's in tonight.
thing.
Yeah, he's been playing very well. All right, Frankie. Good seeing you, man. You're in Montreal tomorrow.
Yeah, we got
Habs, Sabres. Someone's waking up in dead last on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Montreal beats them in reg tomorrow night. All hell might break loose in Buffalo.
Yeah.
That could be crazy.
Or even crazier, it won't.
Yeah.
Like it
or they'll just be like, nah, it's fine.
Just
keep
another
going.
one. Yeah.
Who cares?
Take it to 11.
Whatever. Speechless. All right. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. Radio, TV, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.